Okay. Now, the last example that I want to show you is going to be from a Black Sabbath song. The intro of the song was called Turn to Stone. It was basically just a double bass pattern between the ride cymbal in the left hand over the top, kind of similar to the broken patterns that I played earlier in one of my exercises. Okay, now that I've showed you some examples of how I try to apply my double bass, either in groove format with beats or for licks in fills and songs, hopefully you'll get some cool usage out of this stuff. My whole approach to double bass has always been to find a way to utilize it in a musical way, not just to play straight hammering eighths, but also a way to incorporate some cool fills and licks as well. I want to also mention that if you don't have a double bass setup, let's say, for example, you go to jam with some friends, or you go to play on a track in the studio, you don't have double bass, you don't have a double pedal, but you still want to be able to incorporate some of those licks and fills that you might use with 2 feet. I always try to work on playing some of those same sounding licks with 1 foot. For example, the typical rough, which is 3 strokes with the feet, 1 with the hand, like this. If I don't have double bass, obviously, I can find a way to make it sound similar to that by using the other drums, something like this. Now you get the basic idea. Obviously, you can move your hands around the drums and try different limbs to incorporate similar sounding licks between the kit, like this. Now the whole idea is to try to get as much mileage as you can out of licks that you already know how to play. Remember, just try applying them to different sound sources between different limbs. All right, one of the most important aspects about my playing that I want to touch on is performing. And that includes live performing as well as studio performing. And what I want to talk about is how I listen to the band. When I'm in the studio, I might be playing to a click track, so I may want to have the click real loud, maybe emphasize one of the instruments more so than the other. But when I play live, I try to do what I call peripheral listening, where I'm listening to the whole band and everybody around me at the same time. I may focus or key on the rhythm guitar more so, or maybe the bass on a particular song, depending on what seems to hold me down to the groove and the time better. But I always have to pay attention to everybody and everything that's going around at all times. Even if I have my head down like this and I'm hammering away at my kit, I'm always trying to be aware of the location where everybody is. Because at any given time, somebody may play something a little different, and I have to either support them and back them up, or maybe embellish them with some different kinds of licks in case they go off on a tangent to jam or something. So I find by listening and being aware of your surroundings at all times is a real important key to performing live. The next area I want to talk about is how to play in a more musical way, incorporating some chops or technical aspect of drumming as well as feel. Now we all know that feel is the most important thing for a drummer to do, as well as keeping good time. And we have to also remember the responsibility of good time is not only on the drummer. I found when I play with other musicians that have a real good sense of time, I tend to play with a better sense of time. So the responsibility, even though we are a timekeeper in the band, responsibility is also on everybody else as well. And you'll find when you play with better musicians, you'll tend to be a better musician. Now the way I like to incorporate chops and feel is I try to be inventive with some cool licks and cool beats within the context of a song without sacrificing the feel. I realize my main job is to keep good time and to create a good feel with a solid backbone for the musicians that I'm supporting. So what I want to do is show you some examples that I've incorporated in some songs, some different grooves or beats that I feel were kind of somewhat a little tricky and inventive, but they were based around the riff or phrasing of the song. First example I want to show you was from a song called Devil Stomp from the group Badlands. Now, I tried to take basically one of my major influences, which was a John Bonham or Led Zeppelin-esque type of beat or groove that was based around the guitar riff, and it's almost like I'm outlining the phrasing of the guitar. It goes something like this. Okay, that was Devil Stomp. As you can see, it had a very syncopated, up and down and around, kind of almost like a tongue-twisting type drum beat, and it's based around the guitar part. But you'll see that it still maintains a certain kind of a groove or beat thing, kind of a circular motion. The next song that I want to show you an example from is off at a yet-to-be-released Kiss song called Hate. And basically, I heard the riff, and I wanted to come up with something that I thought kind of was based around the guitar riff, but had a little bit of movement between the drums. Goes something like this. They're ringing everywhere. The next examples that I'd like to show you is incorporating some different type of fills that I call ascending drum fills. In other words, going backwards through the kit, starting with my floor toms. Now, a lot of times it's a very simple thing to do, but we don't always necessarily think about utilizing it. And the way I got this idea was years ago, I was really into Queen, and I heard a song called You're My Best Friend, where Roger Taylor would always do this backwards or ascending drum fill in numerous times throughout the song. So I've taken that kind of approach, and I utilized it a couple of times in a song called Heart of Chrome, in the intro, and also in a song called Tough Love. I did a kind of a triplet fill going through the drums, descending, and backwards ascending. I'm going to show you both examples. Now that was from Tough Love. It's a basic drum fill that I used in one passage of the song. As you can see, I used triplets, descending, then I ascended back, just turned it around and came right back up to the snare. Actually, it's a very simple lick to work out, but it ends up sounding pretty cool if you find the right place to use it. Now the next lick was from a song called Heart of Chrome, where there again, using just 16th notes, I played backwards, starting with my floor toms, ascending up through the drums, and then I went descending the other way, something like this. So that was a couple examples to show you some simple licks that, with some creativity, might sound a little more technical than they actually are. It's just the creativity and imagination that you use in your head and transfer down to your sticks. Another important aspect of my playing that I want to talk about is live playing versus the studio playing in regards to how I apply my drum parts to the songs. I like to take a studio version that may be a little bit more straighter or simple and try to what I call like hot rod it up. It's like taking a car and putting a bigger carburetor and better exhaust system and bigger tires so it'll go faster and do more, get more performance out of it. But mainly it's from the point of view that I want to be a little more entertaining and exciting for the fans. When I was a kid growing up, I really liked when I would go to a concert and see the band take the songs to another level. Now the examples that I want to use would be a song called Detroit Rock City. The original studio version had a drum beat that went something like this. Now what I did is I took that basic beat, which is kind of like a swing shuffly type of groove, and I played it with my feet double bass stuff, like this. Basically, I kind of updated it. I took the original kind of basic groove and put my kind of Eric Singer stamp on it, if you will. Now the next song that I want to show you that I adapted to a live interpretation is Love Gun. We all know the basic beat to Love Gun, which is something like this. That's the opening, very familiar. What I did was outline that same riff on the snare drum with my feet, like this. There again, simple part, simple application, but I thought it kind of beefed it up, and there again, it's a way of adding a little of my own personality without taking away from the essence of the song. Now, another song that I really liked to hot rod up a lot was a song called Parasite. And a lot of people would always comment, hey, I really like the way you spiced up Parasite live. So I want you to check out this footage.
This song's called Parasite. Let me see your hands.
Another area that I want to cover is what I would call visuals, or maybe you want to call it stick tricks. I was really influenced by visual type drummers my whole career, and I've always felt like that I wanted to learn how to incorporate some of that into my playing. So I would always work on, like, stick spinning, it's mainly on breaks. I don't utilize it so much in the context of playing grooves. I usually use it when there's a break in a song. I may hold my hands above my head and do this type of spinning. Sometimes just one hand spinning like that, and sometimes both. Another trick that I like to use is when I'm playing a groove or time, maybe do what I call like stick bounces either off the hi-hat or the ride, something like this. get the basic idea. Another thing I incorporate a lot is cymbal catches, or playing my cymbals what I would call backwards or underneath. And I got that from watching guys like Buddy Rich, Louie Bellson, a lot of big band drummers. Years ago, during the swing era, the drummer was a very featured part of the band. And the more charismatic and visual the drummer was, the more exciting it made the band seem. Rock and roll kind of changed that, where it took the guitar player and the vocalist as more your focus and front figures of the band. But I took a little of some of the tricks that I liked from guys like Buddy Rich and those other guys and tried to incorporate it into the rock and roll thing. Cymbal catches, something like this. They keep always ringing. It's like a telephone. Another one that I like to use is playing my cymbals backwards, something where I strike the cymbal. I think that's a personal choice depending on what level you get to. Obviously, if a band gets a relative amount of success, you're going to need somebody to represent you, to help you go out there and do some negotiating, to help you get on tours, to pull some of the political strings that are needed to help a band, rise to the top. Another aspect I think is really important is always remain professional at all times. I think that's really, really important. We all have good days, we all have bad days. But if you're going to be frustrated or put your anger out on anyone, take it out on your drums. You got to remember, you're working with other people. There's a chemistry involved, and people have to want to work with you and enjoy working with you. You make it easier on them and yourself when you're always professional. That means being on time, being prepared at all times. And in being prepared, I mean, if you go in for an audition, know the material. Because I've found when I've gone into auditions and wasn't prepared, I didn't get the gig. But when I took the time to learn the material and be prepared, I had a lot more confidence. And confidence is one of the keys to going in and representing yourself the best way you can. I mean, to show people how you can really play these drums, you got to make sure you're prepared. Then, once you get to that point, you sold them on your playing, then you got to sell them on you, your personality. You don't have to try to put on an act. Be yourself. Because if they don't find out what you're about that day, they're going to find out eventually. So just be real. That's what it's about. And remember, be cool and nice to everybody. Because you never know who may recommend you or drop your name for a potential gig. It could be a guy as a second engineer in the studio. It could be a guy sweeping floors at a rehearsal hall. It could be a roadie, a tech, a sound man, anybody that you run in contact with. Somebody may have seen you at a show and said, hey, I saw this guy. I really liked the way he played. I met him afterward. Seemed like he had a great attitude. You should check him out. I think he'd be good for your situation. It happens like that. It's happened to me, and it's happened to a lot of my friends. Another thing I want to talk about is staying in shape, taking care of yourself. Remember, what you put in your body, it's going to be reflected in how you look and how you're able to perform. I'm not going to try to preach about diets or anything. I try to eat low-fat, non-fat food, eat healthy food, go to the gym and exercise, practice it as often as I can and as much as I can. I find by doing that, I feel better, I'm more consistent, and therefore, not only do I benefit from my playing, anyone that I'm working with benefits as well. And the last thing I want to talk about is drugs. Drugs are a losing proposition. I'm not here to preach to somebody how they should live their life, but I've seen it around me too many times. A lot of great talented people that really have gone by the wayside.